Breaking the cycle to step forward. Authentic conversations from lived experience and a professional perspective in overcoming abuse with Chris and Beverley Ann.
Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward podcast. This is episode number 44. I'm Beverley Ann and today I'm joined by the wonderful...
Hi everyone, it's Chris here and I always join Beverley Ann on our podcasts.
I should say co-host, that's what I should be saying. And for anyone listening or watching us for the first time, remember to follow us or subscribe, and you can go right back to the beginning and see the journey that we've come from and all the episodes. And I say that because so many people say, oh, I didn't realise there were other episodes that you've done. So we've got guest appearances by some really amazing people, and we've also got Q&As. Have you got 5 minutes? So today's episode is all about exam results and education. And this is something that is something that's in your household right now, Chris, isn't it?
Only because my daughter obviously has just done first year at uni, so she's just literally been told she's passed her last year, which obviously is great. What really niggles me a little bit though, Bev, is that they don't find out their results until after they've signed up for their housing for the next year. So if they hadn't passed, you've got all of that outgoing that you still have to deal with if they haven't passed. So it's like it seems to be a back to front system in my opinion. But we've also obviously had the A-level results last week, and we have had GCSE results today, the day that we're recording this podcast, even though this podcast goes out a week later. But there is so much pressure put onto our CYP, our children and young people, with exam results. And we're just wanting to discuss that today in full and talk about our own educational journey. Because one of the things that I said to you about today's podcast is that I want to send out a clear message that whatever your results are, they don't define you and they don't determine the rest of your life. They just don't. Whilst you're in it, waiting for the results, you probably do feel that if you don't do well, that is the end of your life, yes. Literally, figuratively speaking, that all of your dreams and your plans are all gone out of the window because this piece of paper that you got last week or you got today is not showing what you need to do a certain course. But we're here today to just explain there's going to be many reasons why you may not have got what you needed to get, and it's okay. It really is okay. It doesn't devalue you as a human being. It doesn't, as I said, map out the rest of your life. So before we go on, do you have anything to say to respond to what I've just said? Because I can see you going,
anyone watching, they can see. I think the term, and it comes down to language again, like exam, test, and, this is the score and this is where you are, and yes, we do need to be guided and see where we are. But I like the term assessment and feedback, because with assessment, you see what you've learned. Oh, yeah, I've got that. But most importantly for me, I want to understand the bit I didn't learn. Where could I have improved? What is it that I hadn't put in the right way? Because often I know I'm one of those people. I take in the knowledge, I understand it, but I sometimes have trouble recollating it in my own words and putting it down to paper. So I understand it. It's just it's communicating it back. And yeah, for me, that's huge.
That feedback loop is really important, isn't it? And when you are learning something for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then it's all exam based, your feedback is, oh, A star, you're brilliant. C, D, you're whatever. I don't want to use derogatory terms, but
No.
you internalize that and you just think you're not good enough. And that just isn't the case. The case may be you're just not good at sitting exams. And there are many people that are not good at sitting exams. I'm not. I cannot retain information for love or money. Yet my daughter can look at something, photographic memory, and can sit an exam. She feels she doesn't do well, but every time that girl sits an exam, she comes out with top marks. Whereas
Yes.
me, on my journey, which we're going to talk about in depth in a little while, both of our journeys, I literally failed my exams once, twice, and then I might have passed third or fourth time. And it's just sheer determination that got me through. But I literally do have an issue, and looking back, always have had a problem retaining information.
Yeah. And it's, you know, when we look back, we now test, and I will use that word, we test young children from the time they go into school, but we don't necessarily feed back. So if it's an assessment and then we're feeding back, oh, okay, this is what your assessment result was. So even if it's a C or D, this is your assessment, C or D. However, now we can focus on these other areas. So then we can see that next time, this is the area we need to really concentrate on. And, you know, when I look back at school, I remember putting a lot of effort into an essay, and there was a lot going on. I was being moved. I'd just been moved from my family into care. I was also still being abused at that time. There was all of that going on. And I loved school. For me, school and just learning, for me, I've always loved it. But I remember doing this essay. I was so proud to get it back. But I know they say, read the question, read the question, read the question. But for me to achieve that essay of, I'll never forget, 500 words and get back a big C minus in red pen. That's not judging the person who gave it to me. That's how it was back then. But that has always stuck with me.
What, the C minus? How did it make you feel getting a C minus?
Well, for me, it was huge, my effort in putting that essay together with everything that was going on around me emotionally. So to be cognitive and put that together was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
To get that back, that mark, it just made me, it didn't represent my effort.
Yeah.
And also it didn't take into account that I fully understand now as an adult looking back what was wanted. But as a young person back then, with all what was going around me, I didn't have that skill to be able to use and get it in on time.
And again, no one, I assume, the adults around you, especially in the educational setting, didn't understand what you was going through. They didn't understand the impact, and they didn't realize what an effort it was for you to just even turn up and produce that piece of work that you were so rightly proud of.
Yeah. So, you know, that's why it's important now when some of the children, you know, that are recognised with, say, special needs, it's not to disable, it's to enable, is how personally I look at it. And if I'd had someone one-to-one breaking it down with me, I would have flown. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did the best that I could in my school anyway, and I'm proud of it because I know that I did the best that I could with what was around me at that time.
Yeah.
You know, and I came out with results. And some of those results were C's and D's. And I'm proud of those because it meant that, wow, you've got something on paper. And that's something I've always carried through. So with my own children as well, when they were sitting down to anything like that, it's like, let's break it down. Let's make it smaller. But you know what? It's not, that doesn't define you, that end result. That doesn't define what is it you want to do long term. And some of us are more vocational.
Yeah, we are. But I just wanted to go back to this, your sense of worth tied up with just an exam mark, an exam result. It can be if I put myself back into my 16-year-old shoes, the results were the be all and end all. They just were. So back then, without the hindsight, I really, really wanted to do well because I knew that it literally was going to determine my future at that point in time. Because like you, leaving home at 16, not knowing where the money was coming from to put a roof over my head and put food into my belly, education really was not the priority. However, with that person, the adult that helped me sorting out my finances and sorting out my education between the age of 16 and 18, I was able to do all of that. So for me, school was really difficult purely because, and again, it's hindsight that allows you to speak about all of this now as an adult. If something at school really got my passion, I found it easy. I was able to take part. I was able to write elegantly, eloquently about it. But anything that I found difficult, it was really easy to switch off, disassociate, and let other things that were happening in my life take over my brain space. So like my belly rumbling, for example, because I was so hungry all of the time. If something really interested me, I could almost focus on the thing that was interesting me, and I could forget about my rumbling belly. I just could.
Yeah.
But if it was like maths, for example, which I found it like a foreign language, I just didn't understand what they were asking. And then my rumbling tummy became my focus. So school, even though I loved it because it was my safe place, it was also a big trigger because when you were seen not to be concentrating, and you were disassociating or you were thinking about other stuff, trying to keep safe, you then got told off in the classroom for not concentrating and not taking part. So I think that education and awareness within school environments needs to be there to understand, why is it Beverly's not paying attention? Why is it that Joseph over in the corner is being a little so-and-so and being disruptive? What is going on for these different children? The noisy ones, the ones that are creating havoc, and also the quiet ones, the ones looking out of the window. What is going on for them, and how can we get them involved in education? Because often children that are kicking off or not paying attention or being the class clown, it's because they've either not got an interest in the topic, or they're finding whatever's being taught, they can't understand it, they can't relate to it.
And you've said it so eloquently there, because I remember, so for instance, one of the things, and you won't be surprised, one of the things that often came up is Beverly talks so much. But I got moved schools a lot. So for me to establish a connection, which I wouldn't have known, this was instinctive back then, to establish a connection, I'd want to talk to people, I'd want to get to know them. Because if I didn't know them, they were dangerous and I was bullied. So I know what it is to be singled out. I know what it is to be bullied, especially when you change a new school. I remember when I moved from one senior school to the next, which my home life, everything had changed. So I came home from school one day in the senior school. That night I was taken into care, different area, different school, all for the right reasons. And I'm grateful that that happened. But it also meant that the fashion that was in one school of wearing bunches was not fashionable in the next school. The next school was ponytail. So I turned up with my bunches. And it's these simple things. We can't always necessarily avoid it. But for me, I knew I needed to get involved with people. But then I got singled out anyway because of my bunches. And children can be very cool.
Did the children in your new school know that you were in care, Bev, and how did they react to that?
No, not at the time, and I kept that really quiet, to be honest. I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be labelled for that either. So I didn't say anything. Ironically, I got really badly bullied one lunchtime, and it was physical, and there was a big group of people. And then when I was ill, and it made me very sick, you know, with the mind-body connection, the stress, and I was being sent home, but I wouldn't say anything because I didn't want to grass, as we don't, as you know.
Yeah.
And it was only when another child befriended me, and her name's, I will say, Claire, and she was so lovely. And then word got round, and one of the boys in one of the other children's homes locally to me got to hear, and then I got protection, and then they realised, oh, she's from children's home. And once that got round, that sort of gave me some protection, but I didn't know this at that time. So then when I had to go to school the next day or the day after, I was like, oh no. But ironically, what it did, it meant like people coming up to me and saying, I'm really sorry, Beverley. And then their next question, because they now want to know more about me, because children are curious.
Yes.
And I had no problem, but it would be like, what did you do? Like, they assumed I'd done something to go into care. I just said, I didn't do anything. It's my family. And I kept quiet after that as well, because again, you don't want that shame. You feel like your mum and dad, you know, you put your mum and dad on a pedestal, and when you can't talk about your mum and dad in that way, you're being judged. So for me to go into tests as well was really challenging, because I was moving from schools. So if I'd learnt it one way in one school, whilst it's a national curriculum, they're still being changed with the teachers. So I look back now and I think, wow. But this is the last piece. I was actually fostered by my English teacher.
Yes.
Fantastic. It was wonderful, because the fact that I knew someone, she wanted to foster me, it was like, wow, because I'd been tried to be fostered, and it's not nice. And for anyone listening here who's either going through it, if you're a young person or you're a person that wants to foster, we know we can't avoid it, but from a child's point of view, it's like selling your soul sometimes. It's like job hunting, and job hunting itself and interviews are hard enough without trying to get fostered. But there was my English teacher, fantastic. She wanted to foster me. But then, here we go, because I'm a pupil now, not only in her class, in her school, and the expectation. The expectation to do well in these exams. And even so much so, and this is not a criticism, that's how it was, and it was done with the best intentions, but it scared the life out of me. As I started my O-levels, it was like, you better knuckle down and make sure you get those results. Otherwise, you're not leaving school. And sadly, it was breaking down, and my fostering at that time, and that the overwhelm was huge.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And
they're the triggers that, although I'm learning to overcome them in my older life, they're the triggers for me for tests, exams, however we want to word them.
Yeah, when I was doing my O-levels, I can remember back, it used to be based on your coursework as well as your end exam result. It just wasn't all on one or the other. And then the educational system seemed to go from that to more course-based, and now it's gone back to more exam-based. And I just think that it should be whatever that child excels at. So if you're someone who excels at exams, you should be sitting the exams. If you're a child that excels at coursework, you should be able to be marked on your coursework, because I just think it's completely unfair that children are being marked on stuff they may or may not remember on a particular day. And even if they have got a good memory, and that particular day they're just not feeling well, they're just not performing their best, and the exam or the exam paper, you turn it over and it just doesn't have anything in it. I've had that so many times where I felt so confident with what I had revised and learned that I've turned the exam paper over and I'm thinking, am I in the wrong exam hall? I don't recognise any of the stuff that they want, and that was horrific. So I just think it's completely unfair to judge, mark, assess our children and young people on just what their brain may or may not be able to remember. And if you think back to a child, young person who has got trauma stuff going on, then as soon as they sit down and turn over a piece of paper, they're going to look at a question and they're going to either go, oh, great, I can recognize that and crack on, or they're going to go, oh my God, I don't know what they're asking me. And their brain's just going to go into that fight, flight, freeze place.
Absolutely.
And it's just going
Absolutely.
to switch off that cognition, and they're just going to be in a place of like just survival. So how, knowing all of this, and we're not the only people that know about this, Bev, are we? You know,
No.
everybody seems to know about fight, flight, and freeze now, and the trauma response. Why are we not hearing about that when it comes to children and exams and what else is going on in their lives? I've never heard teachers talk about a trauma-informed approach response when it comes to sitting exams.
Well, just a couple of things. First of all, about the O levels. You talk, because I remember the days of O levels. So O levels was exam based. So you got your result on the O level, and it was GCSE where they counted in your coursework.
CSCs.
CSCs, yeah, CSCs. Sorry, CSCs, where they it was on your coursework, because if your coursework added up enough, that was equivalent of an O level. So that's how old it was all those years ago.
That's how old Bev is, everybody.
Yeah. And I personally quite like that system because it gave an option. But going back to today, we do talk about trauma informed in some scenarios in school. Mm-hmm. But sadly, it's not part of the curriculum, the teaching curriculum. It's only just coming in, which when you think of it, not surprised, think of medical doctors, nurses. Trauma informed is only just coming in, and it's not necessarily part of the medical training. It's additional training. So I think that's where it needs to go right back to the beginning for teacher training. It needs to be part of the course to enable and understand what's actually happening. Yeah, and I've had conversations.
Sorry.
I was going to say, I've had conversations with people, and then they said, what are you asking us to be, though? We're not counsellors. And I was like, well, it's nothing about being counsellors. It's about being aware, because sometimes, you know, I know the worst part of me after lunch was early afternoon, and sitting down, I just couldn't do it. Whatever the subject was after lunch was always my most challenging subject. I'd literally be in the class, and if it was something like geography, I had no, and like you were saying, disassociate. I just couldn't take it in. Whereas if you took me somewhere like for history, took me to a building and then said, imagine what you're wearing and all the rest of it. Fantastic.
Yeah,
but sit me in front of a book. Yeah, sit me in a book and try and get me to remember all this stuff. It was like, not going there.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, moving on from school. So you left school, I left school. How did your education and your learning happen as a young adult and even up to your adult person today? What does your learning look like?
Well, I wanted the opportunity to stay on at school or do further education, but I couldn't. That option wasn't available. Sadly, my fostering just, broke down. I needed to live on my own, and then it became a case of earning money. So I went and I worked in Debenhams at that time, and within 9 months, an old manager had moved up to Alders, and I literally got told, like, come up here, and they've got a really good young managers scheme as well. So I went up to Alders, and I got put on a young managers scheme where we went to college. And I did my training, but instead of going to college in the end, I do a lot of the training in in the store. And what I loved about it and where I thrived, you'd have an interview for something, say a position came up as a supervisor, you'd have that interview, but you'd get feedback. You know, I learned so much more from that. And I will say it was Alders of Bromley, and they were really good for me. I became one of the youngest managers, very successful. But then I also wanted to further my education. I went to night school. So when I left there to go travelling, came back, I put myself through night school because computers back then weren't part of it. But there was a new typewriter coming out where it was the electric typewriter. We could just see one sentence. But I went to night school to learn how to use it. So I taught myself to type. I also went back to adult education to learn a bit more about French, because at school I couldn't take it in. I mean, there I was at home. I didn't know where I was going to get my next meal. You know, when we were going to eat, didn't know what was going to happen. You know, abusive, whether it's sexual, physical, when my mum and dad going to be drunk. You know, the last thing I remember sitting in the lab thinking, and this is a language lab with earphones, talking about the butcher, the baker in France, thinking, why am I learning this? I'm never going to travel. And then, of course, when I got older, I suddenly thought, what's stopping me traveling? So then I went to night school to learn more. So I've always wanted to learn more. And in any career I've been in, I've had to really study. So very proud to say that at one time in the late 80s, I became the first technical salesperson, or woman, I should say, first technical saleswoman to go on the road on central London selling concrete bricks and blocks to architects and specifiers. Now, most people think I couldn't think of anything worse, but that was a role that I'd had as a sales coordinator. But I had this thirst for knowledge. I've always liked learning, and I'd ask all the questions, and I got to know a lot. And in the end, I'd be able to answer the specifiers and like architects, and I'd realise that if I don't know the answer, I'll know where to get it. So I'd give it to them. So I've always had this innate way of doing it. When things changed, and I lost my business and things went horribly wrong and I became very ill, I then thought, right, okay, what is it you actually want to do in life?
Yeah.
And that's where, as a practitioner, you know, wellness and coaching, knowing that just because I'd gone through, I didn't know that it was called trauma informed back then. No one really did, because it was only a word that was just coming out. But learning about, I'm here because of all that trauma, and understanding where it come from. So for me then it was like, well, learn about it. And the learning came from there, the studying. Like you were saying earlier, when I did my study for the chrysalis effect, you have to have a buddy, you have to do so many case studies. I didn't just have one buddy, I wanted 2 buddies. I didn't just do the minimum of case studies, I did double. Not because I wanted to show off, I wanted to make sure that what I was learning, I was embedding.
Yeah.
And what would take some people a couple of years took me, I started in the beginning of November and I got my certificate by the end of May. So 7 months.
6 months. Yeah.
6 months, 7 months. And that was because, like you said, that how you dealt with things, same as me, it was like, I'm going to do this. And I knew it. It was like, wow, this is... So that really helped me. But when it came to writing, I mean, even as an adult, when it came to putting in my case studies and writing, I could do it. I could do it in a vocal exam, but putting it to pen to paper, so hard. So I always had to have someone help me. And again, with all of my studies, because I'm still studying, what's fantastic is I'm now currently studying a degree with the Open University. And what's amazing is when I first started this degree, something I've always wanted to do, but really never thought that I'd have access to do it. I'd have the time, I'd be able to do it. And when I very first started, I made sure that I looked at all the other little access courses that you can have to find out how to find your way around the program, etc. And there was something about extra learning support, learning support. So I thought, okay, just go along, Beverley. So I attended this learning support meeting, and I have to say, it made me cry. And it was only, when did I sign up? Well, what month are we in? With July. So that was January this year. So
July, we're August, love.
August, yeah, time's running away. But it was only in January, early February, this meeting. And I remember sitting there and they said, any care leavers? And I was like, well, yes, even though it was years ago. But it was just, and then they started saying things for different people. It wasn't just care leavers, other people as well. But they were really aware of trauma informed, and it made me cry. Not because I felt ashamed, not because I felt guilty, because like I'm normal.
Yeah.
I can get help. And the fact that I haven't even had to go back there, that doesn't matter, because I know it's there. And even if I've not needed it at the moment, because I've been to other learning things and I've been able to, I know it's there if I need to do it, like as I'm coming up to the harder modules. Just so to me, it made such a difference, and it makes me quite emotional. And the other thing that I love about what I'm doing with my study, and as I said to you, I can't learn just by reading, so I have to read. Okay, not a problem. I have to watch videos. There are audios to listen to. There are different assessments going along. You do each module, and as you do a module, you get your feedback. I can't wait for my feedback. I'm like, I mean, I do more than what I used to going back. And the biggest thing, and I can't believe I'm saying this, and people listening, the younger people listening, will probably think, what? We do essay plans. Now, at one time, I would have said an essay plan. And when they gave us one to look at, I was like, you know, when you turn it over, I was like, whoa, you want me to do that? And I just, it was like I couldn't even see it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it's like for a lot of people.
Yeah. But now, guess what? I love it because I've learned, okay, this is not in judgment of you. This is a tool. But it took me extra learning.
Yeah.
So this is what I just want to share to people. Just because you look at it and think, I can't do that. No, actually, where's your fear? Because it's fear.
It's fear, isn't it? Yeah. It's fear of being shown or reinforced about what someone has said to you in the past that was negative, that has bashed your self-esteem, that has made you feel worthless or valueless. So that's the fear. But if someone can help and support and break stuff down with you, that empowers you to look forward to turning it over and going, wow, I can't wait to get into this.
Yes, and also it's like the question. So I've got my final part of this whole module that I'm about to do, and I'm not going to lie, it's scaring me. But the difference is I'm aware of this now. So I've got another bit more to study, but I'm enjoying now. My next step is to make sure I've got my essay plan together. What do I need for that?
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is I'll make sure that I book a time with my tutor, even if I ask what I used to think was the stupidest of questions.
Yeah.
And say, like, this is what I'm thinking, you know, this is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
So that's just my personal journey. What about you, Chris?
Yeah. I think learning should be for everybody, and we've all got different ways of learning. And I think it's up to the adults to explore with the young people what is their mode of learning. And I think to help them untap that, like you've expressed with what you've shared with us, is the magic of opening up the world to every single person through learning, whatever that happens to be. So we know, don't we, that some people, young people, are more open to like work experience. It used to be called the apprentice schemes. Yeah.
YTS.
So yeah,
Young,
YTS,
young
youth
training
training
scheme.
schemes. Yeah. And now it's apprenticeships.
Apprenticeships.
So we know that there are some young people that will excel at that, and then there's others that will excel going to university, doing the uni life, and getting their degree and then entering the job market that way. So whatever way suits you, great, crack on. And if you find that you've gone down route A and you're halfway through a year, or a year you've done that work and it doesn't suit you, it's never too late to turn around and follow route B. I think you've shown that through what you've just shared with us, Bev, that you've had almost like, I don't know, I've lost count, maybe 3 or 4 different career changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it was the same for me. So I started out not doing great at school, but well enough. I think I got 5 O levels in the end, grade C's. So middle of the road, quite average. I had that help to get into catering college, and that only came about because I enjoyed cookery at school. I wasn't very, as I said, I wasn't academic, I wasn't hands-on, I wasn't creative. I really didn't know what my life would be like. So I thought, right, I enjoy cooking. Let's just go down that road. So I went to catering college up in London. Found out that cooking really wasn't my bag, but I'm on this course, so I've got to stay the course because I really didn't have the money to do anything else. I was stuck on that course. I thought, no, I'll see it through. And on that course, and I've shared this before, there was a module called accountancy, and I really found security in numbers. And I'm not talking about being academic with the numbers, because I just am not. But as for some reason, I found doing the accountancy the way that it was explained for that course, I just found I was really drawn to it. And I thought one day, after college ends, what am I going to do for a job? I need to do something that's earning lots of money. And again, like you, I did a little bit of research, and I found that accountants earn a lot more money than people that work in catering, like a chef or a waitress. They just did. So that's what I was going to do. So I joined up with several agencies. Back then, how you got a job. You joined up with an agency. They got an introduction fee for getting you into a company. They laughed at me. They said, you haven't got O-level maths. There's no way you can become an accountant. And as I said before, that was like a red rag to a bull. You can't tell me what I can and can't do. Who are you? A bit of naivety and a bit of arrogance from my end at that age. But I just thought, who are you to tell me what to do? Do you know what I've gone through? No, you don't. I'm, determined, like you, determined. So I got a full-time job paying £5,000 a year back when I was 18. And then I went to what you call night school. I went to evening class, or night school. And I spent 10 years getting my AAT and my CMAT exams, my management accounting exams. And as I said, I didn't pass straight away on any of the exams. I found them bloody difficult, and I'm holding my hands up to it. And I just could not carry on doing it, because there was no other option open to me in my head and in my life. So I just doggedly sat the exams, failed them. Where did I fail? Learned the new stuff, keep practicing, and then I'd sit them again. Every May and November, I'd sit the exams. But I had to pay for them all myself as well, because I wasn't academic, I wasn't a graduate. So everything I did, I had to pay for. So every time I failed, I could just see my bank account going like that, because I had to pay for the exams, the revision courses, the lot. To wind it all on, so I then got the piece of paper when I was 28 to say, oh, well done, you're a chartered management accountant. And then I thought, oh no, what now? What's next? Because that was that was literally my life. Every evening, every weekend, all day Saturday, all day Sunday was study, study, study. Never had summer holidays, never did any of that because I didn't have no money or time. All my time and all my money went on my education. And when I got that piece of paper, I was like, yeah, got that piece of paper, but now what? So then I thought, right, family time, had my children, had my breakdown, and then I started learning all about trauma and recovery and health and nutrition and stress management and all of that stuff. So I think when you come to a time in your life, in that time in your life, you react to things in a certain way and you try and do your best just to get through. And each part of my life has made me understand that awareness and education are the keys to growth and moving forwards. And when I experienced that and learnt that and knew that failure is not a failure as in you're a bad person or you're stupid and all of these labels that you give yourself and other people may give you. Failure is just that didn't work for you, but another way will. So I learned that over and over consistently. I knew I would be okay in the end because I knew that I could rely on myself because I knew that I would just keep going until I got there. So yeah, education has been really key in moving me forward, and I can see its importance. Now, with my own children, I've always said, just do your best.
Yes,
Your best
absolutely.
is all I can ask of you. But if I find that you've coasted or you've not done your best and then your marks are not as good as they could have been, I'm not going to be very happy with you. Yeah. Because you can try your best and get a C, and that's great, brilliant. But if you don't try your best and get a C, that's for me, it's not good enough. It's just not. Yeah. Because I know that education can open all these doors for them. But just try your best. And whatever the outcome is, the outcome is. Yeah. But if you don't try your best, you're letting yourself down. So try your best.
Absolutely. And you're bringing it very nicely to something called expectation of others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, expectation, and we've got about 5-10 minutes to look at this,
Okay.
because it's the expectation of others also, and even unintentionally.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you feel that you're able to share that story that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
said the
That's
other
fine.
day? Right.
Yeah. So A-level results were coming out last week. We've got GCSEs today. And as I said, this recording is going to be later than that. But I had a participant in one of my Pilates classes, and she's a grandmother. And she was like so stressed out about her grandkids' results that you could see she was agitated, she was stressed, she was upset. And I just said to her, why are you stressing yourself out so much? I really want them to do well. And I said, yeah, I get that and I hear you, but the exams are done. You're waiting for the results. So why are you getting stressed out over results that already they're in an envelope, that they're sealed? You can't change the outcome. And if anything, if you've not done so well, if your grandchildren haven't done so well, then you need to be there to tell them, as long as they tried their best, that's all they can do. Yeah. And if they feel that their exams are not their best, they can always resit them. If they did do their best and they feel that resitting them is not going to get them anywhere, then there's all of these other options. Go and get a job, night school, apprenticeship, there open university. There are all of these other options. The results that are in those envelopes are not your children, not your grandchildren. They don't define them. They don't demonstrate what they're going to do throughout their life and what they're going to achieve. Bev, I know so many survivors that haven't got a qualification, yet they are hammering life. Yeah,
Absolutely.
they are so successful, either monetarily, what's the word? They're either
Monetary.
rich,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
either rich in money or they're rich in life because they've gone out and they're doing what they want. They're following their hearts. They're following what they want to be successful in, what they
Yes.
want to achieve, you know. So it doesn't define you, and it doesn't determine the rest of your life. Like you've had 3 or 4 careers. So have I. I've gone from catering to accountancy to health and wellness to a fitness business to an author, da 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 da, you know. So it doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're passionate about what you're doing and as long as you're enjoying what you're doing. And if you're like us
Absolutely.
two, if you need some more qualifications, because I'm studying at the moment, if you need more qualifications, just go and do them.
Mm.
Yeah. If you are passionate about something and you really got a love for it, you will find a way of doing it and you will achieve it. You just will.
Absolutely. And I don't mind sharing here, just, to show people that it's not all defining, especially, as you say, with the results coming through, you're still a human being. Those
Yeah.
results do not change you in
No.
any way or
No.
shape, but it gives you a moment to reassess. And I remember when my business came crashing down around me and I lost my
That must be
properties and
horrific, Bev.
everything. It,
Yeah.
it and the triggers around it, because let's be honest, some of these, are huge triggers. And
Mm.
even from, that participant in your Pilates, unintentionally, she wants the best
Of course she
for
does.
her
We all
grandchild,
do.
wants the best.
Yeah.
But my curiosity comes when I'm listening. What are her triggers? How was she
Mm.
judged? So it was out of love, but she wants the best. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, oh, so how were you judged? So that's one of the things that comes to my mind. But coming back to my triggers, all of that security that I felt that I'd gathered, that safety net, for the future,
Mm-hmm.
gone. And it absolutely devastated everything. But you know what? There was a part of me that actually was a bit of a relief, because then it was like, come on, Beverley, you actually know what it's like to be here. You were here at 16.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet you didn't have the knowledge that you have now.
Yes.
So what this is going to say to you is dig in deep to yourself, look after yourself. Now, what is it that you want? And that's when I really went in deep. And ironically, I was writing on the laptop. But financially, I knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't have 3 grand.
Yeah.
And that's what I needed to start my studying. But I found a way.
Yeah.
And that's
There's
the
always
thing.
a way.
Yeah, I had to ask questions, or say, I didn't know about payment options. I also realized that I was actually working for myself at the moment. So I could work, earn that money. And so you find a way. If you don't always know how you're going to do it, but you look at all the different options. And that's the best part in a way. And I'm just going to say best. And I know some people are not going to like this word with what I say now. For me, it was about finding the best way, but it was about using my survival skills
Yeah.
for me, instead of just to live and exist. It was about, come on, you know how to do this. You've been doing it all your life. So how can you
Mm.
use your survival skills in a positive way
Yeah.
to get you what you want? And when I thought of it like that, it was like, oh yeah, oh, that's easy.
Yeah. I just think sometimes as well, going back to expectations, like I was saying for my children, I just expected them to do their best. That was my expectation. And if they didn't do their best, whatever that looked like, and hand on heart, they would tell me if they'd done their best or not. And I'm going like, come on, you've got one shot at doing your best. If you do it and it doesn't come off, fine.
Fine.
But if you don't do your best and you don't get that mark, you're then going to be kicking yourself because you could have done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your best is your best, and no one can expect any more than that. But back to expectations. Sometimes people say to you, you can do it, and you really may not be feeling that. maybe then that's when you've got to look at your own self-confidence. And if other people have got that confidence in you, but you don't feel it yourself, and it's stopping you from moving forward, maybe then you just need to take a step back and try something that's not so big in your mind as an obstacle, and just do something small, see how you get on with that, and then proceed forward. But if you really are fearful about doing something, but you still really want to do it, the biggest thing in life is, I don't want to regret not doing something. I don't mind now sitting where I am. I don't mind failing at something. I'd rather not, but I don't mind failing at something. For me, the failure for me in my life would be not trying something.
Absolutely. And that's where, so even my degree, there were certain degrees, because I was being encouraged, come on, this is the right time, you know, I'll support you and all the rest of it. But I didn't want that traditional degree there, and I didn't want that traditional, it's not for me. However, how am I going to make changes if I don't understand a language, if I don't actually understand where it's come from? So what I've been able to do is find a course that encompasses what interests me and enable, in my mind, will enable me to have the information to make changes going forward. And I think that's what's, I always used to say to my children, what's your passion?
Yeah,
So when one of my
exactly.
children was in that place of, I want to go to uni, but do I do this or do I do that? And they came to me and asked me, and I said, my first answer was, what's your passion? Because, you know, if whatever you study is going to be challenging, if it's not your passion, it's
Yeah,
going to be so hard. It will
yeah,
take you through. They did that, and then what they did, they converted into the other one as well. And now
yeah,
they've been able to use both passions going forward.
yeah, yeah. So how are we going to round this up? What is your message to people who are listening to this?
Well, what I'd want to say, anyone who's listening to this, is when you're wanting to learn, the most important thing is ask for support. Understand what it is that you want from it, but also don't be afraid to look at what other support's there. So if that's the option, have a look around it as well. How else can you get help? What do you need? And we don't necessarily know all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, if we can ask ourselves, what do I need? And
Yeah,
for me, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, learning to be vulnerable and asking for that support has always been my biggest challenge. And that's
yeah,
come from me, nobody else. And as for judgment from other people, don't tell me I've done it wrong. Ask me if I know. And if I don't know, then I can go and find out the information.
yeah.
And for
And
you, Chris?
my message is, it doesn't matter what results you've got, if they're not what you need for what you want to do, truly want to do, you can always go back, you can resit, you can find a different route of getting to where you want to go. So don't let exam results value you as a person. Yeah,
Oh,
don't let
yes.
them value you as a person in your eyes and anybody else's eyes, because we are all human beings, and we all are trying to learn, we're all trying to grow, and we're all trying to just be happy. So just reach out like Bev has, and do what Bev's advised, really, is what I say to you. Yeah, find out what is available and find out how you can go about achieving what it is you need to achieve.
And I think, thank you for what you said about me, but I think that comes from both of us as well, you know, in showing that. And that's exactly what we wanted to do with this episode. So thank you, Chris. So as always, if you've been listening and you've got any questions or you've got some feedback, you can contact us on BreakingTheCycleToStepForward@gmail.com. We're on Facebook. We're on
Twitter,
Twitter, Instagram. Not saying that we
LinkedIn,
use it all the time, but we you can
we
contact
are
us.
everywhere.
We are. There's no keeping us quiet. And if there's something else you'd like us to discuss, please put that in. And if you do have a question, we can probably feature it in our Have You Got 5 Minutes Q&A session one month.
And I just want to add, Bev, that Beverley and I are open to being speaking at people's events, for their organisations, in schools, for the police, for social care. Whoever you are, whatever you're doing as a job, we're more than happy to use our expertise and our lived experiences to motivate, to inspire, and to create change. So if you want to book us, please do so via the email or contact us via our social medias.
Absolutely, because what we bring to that is our unique selling point, as they're always saying. Our uniqueness is the fact as well, is that people can ask us questions and we won't be offended. If it oversteps a boundary, we'll just say, this isn't appropriate, I can speak to you about that later. However, if you, in a world where communication is ever evolving and ever changing, you know, ask us a question, and we'll help educate you as well, so you feel comfortable in speaking to people as well about abuse, etc.
100%.
So, on that note, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.